Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome to Policy and Rights, the show about government policy and human rights. Welcome back to Depictions Media and Policy and Rights. I am your host, Michael Clogs. The grain has shipped. There is an announcement in today's press conference from the United Nations that they were able to get a ship underway full of grain across the Black Sea. It probably has already docked, and of course, there are concerns making sure that the cargo and the crew have been screened to ensure security measures to make sure that the grain gets to ultimately where it is supposed to go to from out of the destination. It's shipping destination from Ukraine to Turkey. So that is the one really big announcement from the United Nations from the press conference you're going to hear today. There are other issues around Ukraine, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and other issues that deal with Myanmar, Guatemala, South Sudan, Venezuela, and other things happening. So let's listen to how they managed to get the shipment of grain, as there will be questions answered and asked about that. We'll also hear from the Secretary General, who will be heading to Japan to the memorial site at Hiroshima. Of course, Hiroshima was the site of the first atomic weapon that was launched against from the United States, launched against Japan, and the devastation of what a nuclear weapon can actually do to a city is still reverberated till today. And considering that bomb was dropped in the 1940s. So let's listen to what happened in the press conference. Of course, we're excited over the grain shipment, and we should mourn those who were killed in Hiroshima and understand that nuclear weapon control needs to happen and continue to happen, so that we don't need to see another Hiroshima.
Okay, all right. I have a more full trip announcement to share with you. As I mentioned yesterday, the Secretary General will be heading to Japan on Thursday, leaving here New York on Thursday. In Japan, he will take part in the Peace Memorial Ceremony at Hiroshima, which, as you know, is held on August 6th every year. The ceremony aims to console the souls of those who lost to the atomic bombing, as well to pray for the realization of lasting world peace. The Secretary General will honor the victims of the bombing, commemorate all victims of the Second World War, and reiterate his call to world leaders to urgently eliminate stockpiles of nuclear weapons. During his visit, he will meet with several Japanese senior officials, including Prime Minister Kishida. He will also meet a group of surviving victims of the atomic bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, known as the hibakusha, and he will participate in a dialogue with young activists who are leading initiatives on nuclear disarmament, non-proliferation, and other global issues. The Secretary General will then go to Mongolia at the invitation of President Kurel Ukna. Mongolia is a country that has also shown a commitment to non-proliferation and disarmament by declaring itself a nuclear weapons-free zone. During his visit to the capital of Mongolia, Ulaanbaatar, the Secretary General will also take part in a tree planting ceremony to recognize Mongolia's 1 billion tree initiative, which was launched in October and aims to plant, as its name implies, 1 billion trees by 2030 as part of Mongolia's effort to reduce the impact of climate change and fight increased desertification, which is impacting Mongolia. In addition, he will visit a nomadic family and learn about their way of life. Following his visit to Mongolia, the Secretary General will travel to the Republic of Korea from the 11th to the 12th of August. Details of his schedule of his visit to Seoul are still being discussed with the government. Quick update from Ukraine. Our humanitarian colleagues tell us that civilians are facing tremendous challenges in areas that have experienced dramatic increase in airstrikes and shelling over the last few days, particularly in the south of the country. From Kherson, we received the horrifying news that a minibus with civilians trying to flee a small settlement called Stratosilia was hit yesterday, apparently by a missile. According to reports we received from humanitarian organizations, at least 3 civilians were killed and 5 injured. The situation has also continued to deteriorate in Mykolaiv, where daily shelling is taking a heavy toll on civilians. Over the last 48 hours alone, dozens of houses, several health facilities, and other critical civilian infrastructure have been damaged or destroyed in the city. The strikes have caused civilian casualties, according to reports from humanitarian organizations, although could not verify the actual figure. Our humanitarian colleagues also tell us that access to health services in Mykolaiv and surrounding areas is extremely limited. We reiterate our calls on the parties to the conflict to respect civilians and civilian infrastructure in Ukraine in accordance with principles of international humanitarian law. People in Ukraine desperately need a respite from the relentless violence. Also on our grain ship, it is making its way, the Rizzoni, it's making its way to the Bosphorus. I'm, in fact, tracking it live on my little vessel tracker app here. We expect it to dock in a few hours. It will be inspected according to protocol with representatives of the United Nations, Turkey, Russia, and Ukraine tomorrow. Update from our peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of the Congo regarding the incident that took place in Kasindi on the border with Uganda on Sunday. Based on preliminary information, the incident occurred at the border post where the battalion from the UN peacekeeping mission's Force Intervention Brigade, upon returning from leave, was not immediately granted access to the DRC. The troops waited overnight in an area between the official exit point from Uganda and the official entry point into the DRC. The violent incident that occurred the following morning is now the subject of an investigation opened up by the mission. Peacekeepers involved have been detained on force commander's order. The mission has also contacted the troop contributing country concerned with a view to advancing national judicial investigation on those events. I was asked about the Secretary General's reaction to the latest political developments in Myanmar, and I can tell you that the Secretary General notes with concern that the self-declared State Administration Council on July 31st extended the state of emergency that was declared on February 1st of this year for another 6 months following the convening of the National Defense and Security Council. The Secretary General reiterates his grave concern regarding the transfer of all legislative, executive, and judicial powers to the military since February 1st, and repeats his call yet again for an immediate end to violence and repression, for the full respect of human rights and fundamental freedoms, and for the will of the people and the immediate release of all arbitrarily detained prisoners in Myanmar. Also on Myanmar, the International Labour Organization says the country remains deeply impacted by heavy job losses 18 months after the military takeover and 2.5 years after COVID start. ILO says 1.1 million fewer women and men are employed compared to 2020, with the quality of jobs deteriorating and women being impacted more overall. Also, I was asked about the arrest of journalists in Guatemala. I can tell you the Secretary General noted his concern about the legal action against justice officials in Guatemala. He's also following recent developments regarding the arrest of Jose Ruben Zamora, a journalist and founder of a newspaper that has played an important role in exposing corruption. The Secretary General recalls the freedom of expression and the press play a key role in democratic societies. He calls for the respect of human rights and guaranteeing the process. South Sudan, our mission, peacekeeping missions there, says it is very concerned by the rise of cases in conflict-related sexual violence, despite an overall decrease in the number of civilians impacted by violence in the country. The Secretary General's Special Representatives, Nicholas Haysom, called the exponential surge in sexual and gender-based violence completely unacceptable, called for an end to the violence that divides communities and hampers reconciliation. The peacekeeping mission is supporting the national authorities to ensure accountability and access to justice for survivors and victims through a range of special and mobile courts. It also urges the governments of South Sudan to swiftly investigate human rights violations and abuses to hold perpetrators to account. Martin Griffiths, our friend and head of the Humanitarian Affairs Department, is in Venezuela, where he met with the President of the Republic and other senior government officials, the opposition delegation to the Mexico Dialogue, UN agencies, and national and international NGOs based in Venezuela. Together, they discussed ways to strengthen efforts to ensure the needs of the most vulnerable people are met and that opportunities are created so Venezuelans can also start to rebuild their lives and livelihoods and to meet their aspirations for the future. The humanitarian response plan for this year requires $795 million for the year and aims to support 5.2 million people with assistance, focusing on supporting health services, improving food security and nutrition, strengthening basic service delivery, education, promoting protection, and addressing human mobility. Tomorrow, as I hinted to you yesterday, at 12:15 in this very room, the Secretary General will be here to introduce the third report of the Global Crisis Response Group, and he will be joined by another Secretary General, Rebecca Greenspan, who is the Secretary General of the UN Conference on Trade and Development, otherwise known as UNCTAD. No, 12:15. Between the two of you, you'll get the facts straight. And as you know, this is the Secretary General launched earlier this year a series of reports to examine the impact of the war in Ukraine on food, fuel, and finance sectors. We'll try to give you, I think the report should have been shared with you if it hasn't been already, and we will share with you his opening remarks as soon as they're finalized. Edie.
Almost here. Thank you very much, Steph. A couple of follow-ups. Is it possible to get anything more from Martin Griffiths on the Venezuela trip, which has been of great interest in Latin America?
We will try to get some more, try to get him maybe in this room to talk to you about it.
Okay, and on the grain deal, is there any indication of any further movement of ships, or is this going to be a one-off?
No, I mean, the aim is definitely not for this to be a one-off. We hope that there will be some more outbound movement tomorrow. I think we will take it a day at a time. I mean, to state the obvious, this is delicate, complex, and complicated, but there are other movements planned. Obviously, the Razzoni is the first one to go through, so things are being done in a very meticulous manner, as they will be for the other ones. But we do expect other outbound movements soon.
Thank you.
Okay, Celia.
Steph, did you say on the DRC that the peacekeeping were returning from leave
Yes,
and were not granted access to the DRC?
that's exactly what I said.
Okay. Do we know why?
Well, that's why we're trying to find we've launched an investigation working with the Congolese forces. What happened, and I think most of us have gone through border points by road. There's always a bit of a no man's land between border A and border B. The troops were returning. They crossed from Uganda. They were then in the kind of that no man's land. They were not granted immediate access into the DRC. They waited overnight, and the violence occurred the next morning. That's what I said. Mario.
On the tensions around the visit of Speaker Pelosi to Taiwan, do you have any comment, and has the UN been talking to any of the sides on this?
The only thing I will say is that the policy of the United Nations on the issue on this issue is that we are guided by General Assembly Resolution 2758 from 1971 on One China. Miriam.
As you may know, that
Your microphone, please. I can hear you, but we need others to hear you.
U.S. announced that its drones killed al-Zawahiri in heart of Kabul last week. So did we have any knowledge before that al-Zawahiri, the UN did have any knowledge that al-Zawahiri is in Kabul, and they have any
No, not
reaction?
at all. We had absolutely no knowledge.
We know that almost like 2 weeks ago, United Nations Security Council had a report from that the relation between the Taliban and Al-Qaeda are still strong, and al-Zawahiri actually plays as a role of advisor to the Taliban. So what do you say about that? And also this matter that he was in Sirajuddin Haqqani's place in Kabul in Sherpur, which I've lived there. It's a very nice location. That it shows that they had a relation. Is this going to change any UN's negotiations with the Taliban?
Well, we're just to reiterate, make it very clear. We of course had no idea and information about this al-Zawahiri's whereabouts, the fact he was in Kabul or whatever. That's not something we would have been aware of, and obviously we're not no information on that. Our relations with the de facto authorities in Kabul will continue, and we will continue for the sake of the people of Afghanistan. We will continue to press them on human rights, especially on the rights of girls, on the rights of women, and on the need to meet the many overwhelming, one could say, humanitarian needs of the Afghan people. Sir, and then we'll go to Pam.
Hi, Steph. I have a follow-up on the killing of Zawahiri. Yesterday, the de facto Taliban authorities said they condemned the drone strike, calling it a clear violation of international principles and the 2020 Doha Agreement. So first, I want to ask, what's the UN's opinion on this killing of Zawahiri? And second, what's your reply to Taliban on this?
Well, we are not, as far as I know, party to the Doha Agreement. What I can tell you is that we remain committed to fighting against terrorism and strengthening international cooperation in countering that threat. In that regard, member states must ensure that any measures taken to counter terrorism comply with their obligations under international law. Pam.
Thanks, Steph. It's probably a quick answer. We will hear from Rebecca Greenspan tomorrow, correct?
That's what I said.
You said.
Yeah.
She is in charge of the part of
The
assuaging...
facilitation of trade
facilitating
for
trade
goods
on
from Russia. That's correct.
Is there anything you can tell us? Is there any movement, before she comes tomorrow, is there any movement on any potential fertilizer shipments, grain shipments under this?
I mean, as I said, the role there is a little different, right? We have experts working with all the different parties to try to help and facilitate and answer questions. But these are basically commercial transactions. She may have more to give you, but I don't really have any more at this point.
And do you know what the amount?
I think that sounds like an amazing question for Rebecca Greenspan.
Thank you.
I see you reaching for something. Hopefully, it's your microphone, Talal. Yeah.
No, it's a short question. Can you give us any details about the upcoming shipments tomorrow or after tomorrow?
No, I think. Listen, these are. The short answer is no. We very much hope that there will be movement tomorrow. How many ships will move? We'll have to wait and see. Once the ship is identified, we will know the destination. I mean, these are. I think there were about 27 ships or so that were in three different Ukrainian ports. These have been sitting in port for a long time with cargo, with contract signs ready to go. There are commercial decisions to be taken by the port operators and so on. So as soon as we know the name of the ship, we will know the destination. And in fact, all of this is being done according to very well established international maritime regulations under the stewardship of the IMO. So, I mean, I'll give you the link to my handy ship tracker. It'll tells you the name of the ship. It'll tell you its destination, and the inspection basically that these ships will go through. The outbound is pretty simple. They will check that the cargo that is on board is exactly what it said in the manifest, and that the crew on board also meets the manifest.
Very noisy. Can you tell us anything about the problems that the ship faces in Lebanon? The grain ship that went to Lebanon, they're facing some problems. They've been released?
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Well, you guys talk amongst yourselves, and I'll just bow out. Okay. On that note, we will see tomorrow. And given that the boss will speak, we will not have it. Oh, sorry, Michelle Nichols at Reuters. Yes, Michelle.
Thank you, Steph. It was a follow-up on Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. I understand what the UN position is on that actual visit, but it sparked there's been quite an escalation of tensions now between the world's two biggest powers. So what would be the Secretary General's message to China and the United States during this time?
I will leave my answer to your question as I first stated it in answer to somebody else's question on the same topic. Thank you. That wasn't confusing.
This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.